Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Vaibhav Jyotsna Srivastav, and with me is Prashant Kumar Sinha, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. The headlines. India will assume presidency of the UN Security Council on Sunday. Maritime security, peacekeeping and counter-terrorism to be priorities. Attack on UN mission in Afghanistan draws widespread condemnation. United States announces additional sanctions against Cuba, alleging repression of the peaceful protests by the Cuban authorities. China grapples with a sudden surge in COVID-19 cases. UK launches world's first fully flexible satellite, and at the Tokyo Olympics, Kamalpreet Kaur Indian women's hockey team taste victory in their respective events. Shuttler PV Sindhu bows out of the semi-finals. As the nationwide free COVID-19 vaccination campaign and government facilities for those above 18 years is underway, we advise our young listeners to get vaccinated and help others to get vaccinated. We also advise our listeners not to lower their guard as COVID-19 remains a threat to our health. Please stay at home unless it is essential to go out and continue to follow these 3 simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing, focus on hand and face hygiene. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact the national helpline numbers 011-2397-8046 and 1075. And now the news in detail. India will enter the month of August assuming the presidency of the UN Security Council on Sunday. India began its 8th tenure at the Security Council when it joined the Council as a non-permanent member in January 2021. We have a report.
Come the 15th of August, India will be ushering in its 75th year as an independent nation. Almost poetically, the month coincides with India assuming the presidency of the United Nations Security Council, an organization that India has shared an umbilical cord with since its establishment. In a message to the international community on the eve of the momentous occasion, India's permanent representative to the UN, Ambassador Tirumurti, underscored the significance of the responsibility to India and what India will strive to bring to the global high table.
India will be the president of the United Nations Security Council in August. It is a singular honor for us to be presiding over the Security Council in the same month when we are celebrating our 75th Independence Day. This is our 8th tenure in the Security Council. In the last 7 months of our tenure in the Council, we have taken a principled and forward-looking position on various issues. We have been unafraid of shouldering responsibilities. We have been proactive. We have focused on issues of our priority. We have made efforts to bridge the different voices within the Council to ensure that the Council comes together and speaks in one voice on a variety of important issues of the day. This is what we will bring into our presidency. India will be organizing signature events in 3 major areas: maritime security, peacekeeping, and counter-terrorism.
As India took its place as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council in January, India assured the world that it would be a voice for the developing world. Since the formative years of the UN Security Council, India has been steadfast in its adherence to the cardinal principles of the organization and an unwavering voice for the values it seeks to uphold. In its very first tenure, Sir Benegal Narsingh Rao presided over the adoption of Resolutions 82 and 83 calling for the cessation of hostilities during the Korean War.
The first paragraph of the operative part of the draft resolution has been revised so as to read: 1. Calls for the immediate cessation of hostilities and calls upon the authorities in North Korea to withdraw forthwith their armed forces to the 38th parallel.
In 1972, as the new nation of Bangladesh was eager to make its voice heard at the international fora, India once again strongly advocated for Bangladesh's entry into the United Nations. A resolution to this effect, however, was vetoed by China.
And it is the hope of my delegation that the Security Council will ensure prompt consideration and indeed a final decision which would enable the People's Republic of Bangladesh to take its due place among the member states of the United Nations as early as possible.
As the world today grapples with the intertwined problems of climate change and international peace and security, India at the very first UNSC summit provided a prescient voice for the problems that we face today. The then Indian Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao eloquently put forth the intimate connection between natural resource exploitation and conflict.
It is essential that we take note of the emerging forces, the socio-political undercurrents that result in unrest, instability, and in the recurrence of violence across the globe. Lasting peace and security necessarily require comparable levels of human happiness across the globe. It is impossible to think of a United Nations functioning usefully or harmoniously while humankind continues to be riddled with ever-increasing disparities and while the world's natural resources that are really humanity's common heritage, land, water and air, are getting fast depleted by thoughtless acts of overexploitation and environmental degradation.
Reformed multilateralism is a cause championed by India in letter and spirit. India envisages a UN which is more representative and thereby stronger in its ability to erect common cause amongst nations. India has consistently battled for the entry of countries from the global south into the organization. In its 7th tenure at the Council, India's then permanent representative to the UN, Mr. Hardeep Puri, welcomed South Sudan's entry into the organization.
As a member of the Security Council, it has been our great pleasure to be associated with the adoption of a resolution today that will lead to the General Assembly accepting the Council's recommendation on South Sudan's application for UN membership. We look forward to South Sudan joining the United Nations as a full-fledged member tomorrow.
Come the 1st of August, India as the President of the UN Security Council will uphold its rich legacy of being a voice imbued with fortitude, care for humanity, the environment and the downtrodden. India shall be a voice for peace and strength. This is Pawan for World News, AAR.
The UN Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, UNAMA, strongly condemned an attack in its main compound in the western Afghan province of Herat on Friday that left an Afghan police guard dead and other officers injured. In a statement, the UN said that the so-called anti-government elements targeted entrances of the clearly marked UN facility with rocket-propelled grenades and gunfire just hours after Taliban fighters penetrated Herat city and clashed with Afghan security forces near UNAMA's provincial headquarters. Deborah Lyons, the UN Special Representative for the country, called the attack deplorable. Secretary General Antonio Guterres added his strong condemnation and reminded that attacks against UN personnel and premises are prohibited under international law and may constitute war crimes. The Afghan Foreign Ministry condemned the attack in the strongest terms on Saturday. It said that by carrying out such attacks, the Taliban have taken violence to a new phase, entailing dangerous consequences. The continuation of such crimes will seriously endanger the continuation of international organizations' presence and their activities in Afghanistan, the statement added. The statement also said that the attack on the UN office was the latest in a series of violent attacks that are part of war crimes that the Taliban are perpetrating. Afghanistan called on the international community and relevant international organizations to hold the Taliban accountable for their war crimes and non-compliance with international humanitarian law.
The United States announced additional sanctions against Cuba on Friday. In a statement, the U.S. State Department said that the decision was taken in response to the Cuban regime's repression of the peaceful protests that started on the 11th of July. On the 22nd of July, the U.S. had imposed sanctions on the leader of Cuba's military and on the Cuban Ministry of the Interior's Special National Brigade. The new round of sanctions are against the island's National Revolutionary Police and its two leaders, Oscar Callejas Valcarce and Eddie Sierra Arias. The statement said that the action is pursuant to the global Magnitsky Sanctions Program. Under the program, the United States seeks to impose tangible and significant consequences to discourage malign actors and promote accountability in connection with serious human rights abuse. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden met with Cuban leaders on Friday. In his remarks after the meeting, Mr. Biden said that the U.S. is expanding its assistance to political prisoners and dissidents. Meanwhile, UNICEF has warned that more than 100,000 children in northern Ethiopia's Tigray region could face the most extreme form of malnutrition over the next 12 months. According to reports, aid is being blocked by ongoing fighting between Tigray forces and Ethiopian government troops. High-level talks involving the UN, the US and the Ethiopian government are taking place over the next few days.
More than 46 crore 72 lakh doses have been administered under India's nationwide COVID vaccination drive so far. The Health Ministry informed that more than 53 lakh vaccine doses were administered during the last 24 hours. The recovery rate stands at 97.37%, with over 37,000 patients recovering in the last 24 hours. During the same period, over 41,000 new cases were reported in the country. The daily case positivity rate is at 2.34% and it remains below 5%. 593 deaths have been reported in the last 24 hours.
Now let's take a look at the coronavirus updates from around the world. China is grappling with a sudden surge in COVID-19 cases as many as 15 cities and 5 provinces, including capital Beijing, all linked to Nanjing, the capital of Jiangsu province. As per official media, it is the most extensive domestic spread after the virus outbreak in Wuhan in December of 2019. Nanjing city has suspended all flights after a number of airport staff tested positive, an official media report said. Prasad Bharati, special correspondent in Beijing, reports that since the novel coronavirus emerged in the central Chinese city of Wuhan in late 2019, China has taken a zero-tolerance approach to infections, quickly testing large populations, massive contact tracing and locking down communities where needed to break the infection chain. The unexpected spread starting from Nanjing and in other provinces earlier has forced experts to weigh the utility of this harsh approach as compared to finding ways to live with it. Moving on, Bangladesh received the second consignment of 7.81 lakh doses of the Oxford's AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine from Japan under the COVAX arrangement of the WHO on Saturday. The consignment was received by Foreign Minister of Bangladesh, Dr. A.K. Abdul Momen, from Japanese Ambassador to Bangladesh, Naoki Ilto, at the Hazrat Shah Jalal Airport in Dhaka. This is the second consignment of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine after the first consignment of 2.45 lakh doses were received on the 24th of July. In today's hotspot section, we build up to India's ascension to the presidency of the UN Security Council. In conversation are KP Fabian, former diplomat, and Nilova Roy Chaudhary, journalist.
India has been elected for a 2-year tenure as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council in January 2021, with the world in the grip of the deadly COVID-19 pandemic, and it is set to assume the rotating presidency of the UN Security Council in August. For this 1 month, it has a packed agenda of issues on which it would like to work, probably the most critical of which is pushing for a negotiated peace settlement in Afghanistan. There are also a host of other important issues on the UNSC agenda. Ambassador KP Fabian, why it is important for India to lead the world's highest collective decision-making body at this point of time?
You know, it's a happy coincidence that India assumes the presidency in the month of its independence. Of course, India has been president earlier also. We have been on the Security Council from 1950-51 onwards, as many as 8 times. But what is important and what has been important in regard to India's presence at the Security Council is that India has endeavored to impart some balance. Balance because, you know, the P5, as you know, are not always united. They have their interests. And there is also the veto power. Veto, which means I forbid. So that makes it difficult for the Security Council at times to act. But even when they act, the P5 try to push their own particular interests. That is one matter. Second is that the non-P5, they need to have a good sort of spokesperson for them, can articulate matters, who can engage in, with considerable patience, engage in drafting and all that. So India provides a bridge. So what emerges is something more focused, more forward-looking, and also, this is very important, sensitive to the situation on the ground.
The Maldivian Foreign Minister Abdullah Shahid was here in India last week in his capacity as the President-elect of the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly, which the high-level segment of which begins in September. When Mr. Shahid visited India, he met with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and they talked about issues that should be on the United Nations agenda, including, of course, a reform of some of the UN organs. Now, I understand and I know that the reform is not a part of the UN Security Council mandate. But, for example, Ambassador Tirumurti, our permanent representative there, has said that it is time for the UN Security Council to take a holistic approach to the issue of maritime security that safeguards the common prosperity of all countries. Now, how can a country like India go about pursuing this kind of an issue? How is it taken forward, Ambassador? Because you would be familiar with the functioning of the organization.
Before answering that question, may I say a word about the present structure of the Security Council and of the need to sort of change it, if I may. See, what happened was that it was President Roosevelt who had this idea of having another international organization to succeed the League of Nations. And his idea was that in the global village, we need some policemen. That means the rest of the population should be disarmed. He started with 4 policemen, that is United States, United Kingdom, USSR, and China. Well, when it came to Churchill, he was scandalized that China should be there, but being very clever, a negotiator, he said that he would agree to China provided Roosevelt brings in France, which was, getting liberated at that time. When it came to Stalin, he was more than scandalized that, and quoting his own word, an Asiatic power should be sitting in judgment upon us Europeans. But finally he agreed, but then there was a little bit of quid pro quo and the veto came into force. That is, Stalin was scared, and I suppose reasonably scared, that the United States will have such overwhelming support both in the General Assembly and in the Security Council that USSR will be forced into situations not to its advantage. That is why it came. Now, that was a structure. Perhaps it was good enough post-1945 for a couple of years. But after decolonization, and after the collapse of the Cold War, this structure needs to be changed. But anyway, as you yourself said, it is perhaps not at the Security Council for action in that direction will be taken for provisions in the Charter. Coming to maritime security is important for all countries. And what is required is the seaborne trade should be able to go without any problem. Comes to military ships and armed military ships, it's a different matter. Now, what we have witnessed is that as regards the South China Sea, People's Republic of China has extended its control and occupation beyond the lines sanctioned by the UNCLOS, that is United Nations Law on the Sea Convention. And as you know, the other day, America sent a ship there. So we have a problem. We have to make sure that the Indo-Pacific should remain under nobody's control, but it should be a zone of peace and for peaceful commerce and for cooperation. Because what India has in mind in Indo-Pacific is not ganging up against anyone, confrontation with anyone. No, it is cooperation with everyone. And if there are obstacles to that cooperation, well, they should be removed as best as possible. So the Security Council is certainly a forum where this can be discussed, but sound a word of caution that because China and Russia, as I mentioned, are veto-wielding powers, we should not expect immediate progress.
Ambassador Tirumurti has also spoken of saving Africa from sanctions, for example. That is the other thing that dominates the Security Council at this point. What exactly, for example, in West Asia and the Middle East, we have leveraged our strong and historical links to convey our views on Palestine, Yemen, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq. Now, there are tensions and conflicts in all of these countries that he's mentioned. What exactly, according to you, Ambassador, should India try and push for on this particular agenda?
As regards Africa, India and Kenya voted against a resolution for continuing the sanctions on South Sudan just 2 days ago, 3 days ago. Only India and Kenya. So let me put it this way, that there is a tendency on the part of the international community led by the West and at times not resisted by the non-West among the P5 to use sanctions as a remedy for everything. You impose sanctions and you expect things to sort of fall in place. And if they don't fall in place, what do? You continue with the sanctions. Something is wrong with this sanctions-obsessed approach. As you know, in the case of Iraq, how many hundreds of thousands of Iraqis suffered because of sanctions, because somebody was looking for weapons of mass destruction, which ultimately were not there. So sanctions have been misused or abused. So India's efforts to make sure that the African countries which get into this trouble are given relief. That's very, very important. Now, coming to the second part, we all know what is happening, say, in Yemen, for example. There, I think there is scope for progress, because what is happening is that there is almost a military stalemate between the Houthis and the Saudi Arabia-led coalition. In fact, I said almost, because actually the Houthis are making incremental gains. So it's not exactly a stalemate. And in Saudi Arabia also there is a reckoning that this war they started in, recall, March 2015, chasing what I call a mirage of military victory. It was Operation Decisive Storm, as they called it. So I think it should be possible for clever diplomacy to find a set of words acceptable to both the Houthis and Saudi Arabia to have some sort of ceasefire. Of course, Iran comes in there because Iran supports the Houthis, not so much by way of arms, but morally and otherwise. So unless there is a little bit of move towards rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia, and I choose my words very carefully, a move, not final completion. Unless there is a move towards rapprochement, we will not get a ceasefire in Yemen. So that is important. The other day, the Syrian forces under Bashar al-Assad, they have started bombing, and about 40,000, more than that, people are in danger. There, of course, Russia is very difficult. They wanted only one line for humanitarian, only one corridor and all that. There again, something should be possible to make progress. Then what else is happening in that area? West Asia?
Palestine, West Asia.
Palestine. Yes. Palestine. It's like this. We have a new government in Israel, and I think it was necessary to have a new government because he was conducting policy with a huge accent on personal survival. So the national interest gets conflated with individual interest. And as we know, the Arab or the Palestine political parties supporting from outside the government. But I do not expect any move towards settlement and all that. But what we can hope to expect is in regard to new settlements and things like that, in regard to the treatment of Palestinians and all that, there could be some progress. But then, as we know, the Palestinians themselves are deeply divided.
Thank you very much indeed, Ambassador Fabian.
Thank you so much.
Moving on to sports, it was a mixed bag in terms of India's performance at the Tokyo Olympics. India's ace shuttler PV Sindhu lost to top seed Tai Tzu Ying of Chinese Taipei 18-21, 12-21 in the semi-finals of the women's singles. However, Sindhu is still in contention of a podium finish when she'll feature in the bronze medal match against China's He Bingjiao on Sunday. The quest for medal of Indian women pugilist Pooja Rani also ended as Qian Li of China defeated her in the middleweight 75 kg category 5-0. Top-seeded boxer Amit Panghal also bowed out after losing to Yubergen Martinez of Colombia 1-4 in the pre-quarterfinals of the men's flyweight event. India's campaign in archery ended this morning as Atanu Das failed to qualify for the quarterfinals after going down against Takaharu Furukawa of Japan 4-6 in a closely fought battle in the men's individual event final. Indian women hockey's team brought cheer as the team qualified for the quarterfinals after Great Britain defeated Ireland 2-0. India will now face Australia in their quarterfinal match. Riding on Vandana Kataria's historic Olympic hat-trick, Indian women's hockey team defeated South Africa 4-3 in a must-win Pool A match. Athlete Kamalpreet Kaur entered the finals of women's discus throw after pulling out a monster 64-meter throw in the qualification round. India's national record holder Kamalpreet also finished second in the overall standings. The final will be held on Monday. Indian shooters Anjum Modhil settled for the 15th and Tejaswini Sawant for 33rd position, failing to make it to the finals of the women's 50-meter rifle 3 positions event.
A UK-built satellite capable of being pre-programmed in space has been successfully launched from the French Guyana in South America. The Eutelsat Quantum, backed by UK Space Agency funding and built in Britain by Airbus, is the first of a new generation of fully reconfigurable satellites that can respond while in orbit to changing demands on the Earth. In a statement, the UK government said that until now, large satellites were configured on the ground for specific tasks that could not be changed after the launch. Eutelsat Quantum's coverage, bandwidth, power and frequency can all be altered in orbit.
Now let us take a look at major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. The Guardian says Myanmar junta accused of crimes against humanity 6 months on coup. The Globe and Mail writes Bosnian Serbs defy international envoy's decree against denying Srebrenica genocide. Wall Street Journal writes suspected drone attack on Israeli-linked tanker in Arabian Sea kills 2 crew. Financial Times reports Russia's central bank governor warns that inflation is here to stay. And South China Morning Post writes British Navy shows global ambitions with aircraft carriers South China Sea mission.
And now a quick look at the headlines once again. India will assume presidency of the United Nations Security Council on Sunday. Maritime security, peacekeeping and counter-terrorism should be priorities. Attack on United Nations mission in Afghanistan draws widespread condemnation. United States announces additional sanctions against Cuba, alleging repression of the peaceful protests by the Cuban authorities. China grapples with a sudden surge in COVID-19 cases. UK launches world's first fully flexible satellite. And at the Tokyo Olympics, Kamalpreet Kaur, Indian women's hockey team taste victory in their respective events. Shuttler PV Sindhu bows out of the semi-final. India is celebrating the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favorite bhajan, Vaishnavajan, by artists from Cuba.
Sakala lokama saune vande nindanakare kenire.
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.